Okay, welcome everybody. We are live for our Monday Night Moshiach class. And let's get started. Okay. Microphone over here. Okay. We are on now Parshas Vayishlach. Let's get started. Meninim yuchedim Yom Shabbos Kodesh Zeh. Tchila soy erev Shabbos. Shebo nase achila Yom Shabbat. Razal mi shetarach be'erev Shabbat yichol b'Shabbat. So it says, as we find ourselves in the unique time of Shabbos, and we know that in the beginning of Shabbos, which is known as Erev Shabbos, the start of Shabbat, it says if you eat on Erev Shabbos, it's considered like you get a taste of Shabbos. So another year, it's a preparation by eating on Erev Shabbos. It's like a taste of Shabbat. And the Yom Tes Vav Kislev Shabbat Kiyamis Hara B'Shleimas. And on the 15th of the month, when the moon is full, we're getting back into the moon again in its fullness. Shleimas the Kodesh Kislev. It represents the completion of the month of Kislev. It's the Yom Gamar Motzi Shabbat. And this completes its state in Motzi Shabbat, and it's drawn down further until we get to the third day of the week, the Yom Yud Tes Kislev, Hag Geula. So we know that basically it says that the Shabbat blesses the 3 days after it, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And starting Wednesday, you prepare for Shabbat Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So half of the week you're preparing for Shabbat, and the other half of the week Shabbat is blessing that started the week. And so the Rebbe says on the third day of the week in that year is Yud Tes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev, which is the Hag Geula Shel Rabbeinu Hazakim. Hag HaHagim, the Rosh Hashanah, the Torah Chassidus, which is the day of the redemption of the Alter Rebbe. The first Rebbe of Chabad was redeemed from prison on the 19th of Kislev for spreading Judaism in communist Russia. Excuse me. And it's called the Hag HaHagim. In Hasidus terminology, it's the festival of all festivals, and it's called the Rosh Hashanah of the Torah of Hasidus. Because once the Alter Rebbe was redeemed from prison, that began the process of him spreading out the well springs of Hasidus in a much further capacity than was before. And the advantage uniquely of the way that this falls out, that Yud Tes Kislev, like the first time, because the Yom Yud Tes Kislev, Gam Yom Gimel Hakufada Bo Kitov. The original Yud Tes Kislev was on also the third day of the week. This year it is on. 1 second, I think it's the same thing. Yes, it is also on the third day of the week. Interesting. And something special about the third day. This is the day that God said, Kafalim, double over Kitov. He said it was Kitov 2 times. The Seder Tehillim, B'Posek Pada V'Shalom Nafshi, and it's known that when the Alter Rebbe was redeemed from prison, he was in the middle of saying the Posek Pada V'Shalom, which is in the book of Tehillim on the 10th day of the month, and he was reciting that Posek, which is basically, "You have redeemed my soul in peace," as he got redeemed. And the same thing happened with the Mittler Rebbe, the second Rebbe of Chabad, which we celebrated his Yom Hilula, his Yom HaGeula, his festival of redemption, this past Shabbos. Yom Shabbos Kodesh Tes Zayin Kislev. Erev Shabbat B'Tes Vav Kislev. Okay. And all matters we know are exactly and precisely divine ordained. God arranges every single detail in creation, but taklisi diuk in the most precise way. There's no coincidences. If you run into someone in the middle of a day, then God arranged that meeting. It doesn't mean there was a coincidence if you're thinking about them. In any case, every little detail is arranged by God. The Yutes Kislev, who mites vav kislev, shabo kiyama sirah ishlemata kedukamen. The Rebbe wants to make a connection between Yutes Kislev and the 15th of Kislev when the moon is at its fullest state, which preceded and prepared for the Yutes Kislev. Okay, base. Bagdam sha'ada tamiha, but noga the hagagula Yutes Kislev haka hagim sheyesh bo shinoi the gabi. There's something unique in this festival, the Yutes Kislev, regarding all the other festivals of the calendar. Pesach v'Sukkot nikvo'o b'yom ha'chamisha eser b'chodesh. We know, for example, in Pesach and Sukkot, they occur on the 15th day of the month. Shabo kiyama ischarat b'shleimoisa, when the moon is at a state of fullness or completion. B'shavuos noisef b'kach shakasu lo tila chag hazeh. And we know that in the week, in addition to this, as it is written, like for this festival specifically, and in many days of the month, it is only on the 15th. We know, generally speaking, when holidays, like most of the Jewish holidays, fall out, I think, outside of maybe Hanukkah and Yutes Kislev, which both occur in the month of Kislev. All the other holidays occur in the first part of the month. Shavuos occurs on the 6th of the month. Pesach, Sukkot, all on the 15th of the month. And the difference, as we know, is in the beginning of the month. And we've discussed this subject at length in these classes a few weeks ago when Parshas Toldos. In the beginning of the month, the moon grows, it waxes, it gets bigger. And the 15th of the month, it's complete. And then from the 15th of the month to the 29th or 30th, depending on how many days there are in that Hebrew month, it wanes, it gets smaller. And this process repeats itself every single month. So there's something unique in Yutes Kislev. It doesn't occur in the first 15 days of the month where the moon is getting bigger and bigger. Rather, it occurs in the second 15 days of the month when the moon is shrinking every single day. So the question is, why would Hashem arrange for that to happen, right? A day of light, of revealing the light of Chassidus, of the Yechidah, of the inner part of the Torah. You would think that would happen on a day where the light is growing, not where the light is shrinking. And again, we see this concept at Hanukkah. Same concept on Hanukkah. It occurs on the 25th day of the month. And as the days of the Hanukkah increase, the moon decreases. It gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Again, it seems to be the opposite, that we're celebrating Hanukkah and Yutes Kislev, which are festivals of light, of revealing light, and yet they're occurring in a time of the month when the darkness is increasing. So there seems to be a confusion or concern as to how this is occurring. Gimel. So there is to explain this, first of all, the decreasing of the moon, in the second half of the month, and the connection to the Jewish people, which we are considered like the moon. Bagdama, first of all, as we previously said, on the first 15 days of the month, the moon grows every day bigger and bigger. Pochet v'helech or levana b'yom le'yoyim, and the opposite on the second 15 days of the month when the moon shrinks. Yatzar l'chori gam haminyan levana ba'oifan shechatzi harishayim. Shel chodesh yeh minyan yehemil ad mosaf v'helech. Chodesh yeh minyan yemei apesuach v'helech. So now the Rebbe has an interesting question. He says, if in fact the days, the moon is shrinking, right, and getting smaller, why don't we count up to the 15th day of the month, 1, 2, 3, 4, 15, and the second half of the month when the moon is shrinking, count back down, 14, 13, 12, 11, 12, down to 1, and then start all over again, count up to 15, and then count down again the second half of the month. אבל לא לזה בלבד שמניין ימים חצי שני שהחודש אינו פסוח ואילך אלא אדרבה שמויסף והילך כמניין גם לגבי השלימוס דיום ט"ו. And so what happens is the opposite. We're getting bigger and bigger, but we're counting higher and higher and higher, right? We count from 1, we go up to 29 or 30, depending on how many days are in the Hebrew month that month. And then it starts over again when the moon renews. In other words, the days that we count in the month, the Hebrew calendar is very unique, is that it follows the moon. There's adjustments for the sun, but most of the base of the calendar is following the moon, where the Gregorian calendar is following the sun's pattern. So if we're following the patterns of the moon, the Rebbe makes a very logical argument. When we get to the 15th of the month, the moon is full at its biggest. Starting on the 16th, it starts to shrink. So we should start counting down, 14, 13, 12, 11, down to 0, and start all over again, 1 through 15, 15 down to 1, 1 through 15, etc. like that. But that's not what's happening. And in fact, it's the opposite that's happening. It's getting bigger and bigger. There's further to say, in addition to the adding on, every day adding on a number, going higher and higher, 1 all the way up to 29 or 30. Not only that, we're seeing that the gematrias, the Rebbe is now going to play with the letters and how each one of them is connected to a very special meaning. In other words, Yud Zayin, when the moon is shrinking, is the gematria of Tov, or good. Yud Ches is Chai, or life, which is the 18th. Yud Tes is a gematria of Batov, in good. Number Mispar Chaf, 20. Yud Amilui is the number Yud. If you spell it Yud, it's complete, and Yud Vav Dalet, 20 letters. Mispar Chaf Aleph, Ech Toyud Israel, how good. Mispar Chaf Beis, 22. B'cha Yivrach Yisrael. Mispar Chaf Gimel, gematria De Toivoi. Mispar Chaf Dalet, Mishmati Kedechav, Kedekad Shmashisecha. Mispar Chaf Hey is going through each one of the 15 through the higher numbers through 29. Kol Sibruch Esbe Yisrael. Kav Vav Mispar Farshar Havaya. Kav Zayin is gematria Zach, pure. Kav Ches is Koach, or power. Kav Tes is Yimei HaChodesh. Lehem Chodesh Melech V'Kayetze B'Zeh. So it's just adding this extra dimension that each one of these higher numbers from 16 up to 20, their gematrias are for very good things, bountiful things. Yet the moon continues to get smaller. The time that Ravar Kivan Shishnai Tzivoy Ra'a Minitinas Koach Me'iluin Bekoidesh Ein Mururidin. One second. Oh, and the reason for this is that since there's a change in the teaching out, so this gives us the power, in other words, to elevate in holiness. In matters of holiness, we increase, we don't decrease. We always go higher. And the same idea is we're increasing every day of the month. Every time, it's a general concept in Judaism that you elevate, you don't go down. You always go higher and higher in matters of holiness. And you don't decrease. Yet we see the same concept in the counting the days of the month. After the moon is filled on the 15th day, we keep adding higher and higher. So If that's the case, again, why is the moon shrinking in the second half of the month? It doesn't make sense. It's getting darker. And the moon reaches its completion and then starts shrinking again after the 15th of the month. It seems to be the opposite of the teaching that we don't decrease in holiness. We only increase. So why do we keep counting higher and the moon keeps shrinking and it keeps getting darker? And a lot of these concepts, if you joined us during, as we mentioned, the Sikha a few weeks ago, discussed some of these concepts. So you'll see an overflow, if you will. So one of the explanations is the sun and the moon are what we call is a makabel and a mishpia. The moon is a makabel and the sun is a mishpia. Talk about these concepts. The sun represents what we say is God or godly energy or Zer Anpin. And the moon represents Am Yisrael, the Jewish people, or the receiving end of that, which is likened to the wife and to the husband, or Malchus. And the same idea with the moon. The moon is not an independent luminary. Its light is reflecting from the sun. So this is what we call a Shpia and Makabel relationship, right? Like a teacher and a student, where one is giving and one is receiving. The sun is the giver and the moon is the receiver. In other words, the moon has nothing in and of itself. Makabel or hachama. What it has is the light it gets from the sun. And the influence that it receives is only a diminishing of the light. When the moon is renewed at the beginning of the month, as we've spoken about, you don't see it. It's a tiny little point, which means it's not receiving the light from the sun at that point in time, because that's why you don't see it, because it's the furthest away. No, it's the closest, because it's the closest to the sun. You don't see the light that it's receiving from the sun. It's only one point. And every single day we add on to the lights that it receives from the sun as it gets bigger. In the 15th of the month, the discus, the shape of the moon, is complete. And the moon reaches its state of fullness. And then at that point, it's complete in the light that it receives from the sun. And that's why you see it at its fullest. Nevertheless, it's still in a state of being a makabel or a receiver. And nevertheless, it is not at its ultimate completion, the moon, like it is the sun. And it's not where it's not necessary to receive the light of the sun. In other words, the moon is always receiving its light from the sun, and that gives its light. So therefore, it's not a luminary in and of itself so much, because it's just reflecting the sun. Like it says, and the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun. It's known that when God first created the two great luminaries, the sun and the moon, they were equal. They were the same size. And the moon complained to God and said, hey, how are you going to have two rulers of the sky? How are you going to have two lights that are equal? Can't have two kings is one crown. How are they both going to rule? God said, no problem. I'll shrink you down. And he shrunk down the moon. And it says that when Moshiach comes, the moon will once again shine on its own like the sun. In other words, it will no longer be dependent on the sun for its light. It will shine and will be the same size of the sun as it was prior to God diminishing it. And then once again, we will have two great luminaries. That's what's going to happen when Moshiach comes. And we're going to explain what that means. I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but we're going to explain according to Kabbalah and Hasidut in a deeper way what that means in a mystical way. There is to say that just like the light of the sun, of the moon receives the light of the sun, the completion will be even more when the sun becomes like the moon, as we say. So how does that happen? How do we get the light of the sun and the light of the moon to become equal? You have to have a higher energy than both of them. In other words, to get the moon back to the same size as the sun, where they were before the sin, there has to be an energy in order for these two to coexist together in a very high level. There has to be an energy higher than both of them. And that is what is known as Keter. Keter, or the crown, will be one crown that will kind of encompass both the sun and the moon. And then we will reach the real completion when the moon and the sun will reach a state of oneness. When there is this Keter, the crown that rules over both of them, as we're going to start to explain now what that means. Okay. Hey, let's start explaining. And the cause of the change between the first half of the month, when day by day the light of the moon increases and it gets bigger, to the second half of the month, or when the second half of the month the moon's light shrinks and becomes smaller and smaller. Is because in the first half of the month the moon is traveling far away from the sun. This is a very important point. And because it is getting further and further distant from the sun day by day, its light is increasing, right? Because it's getting further away, so that light of the sun is reflecting on it bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it gets to the 15th of the month, when it's reflecting where it's completely at its state of fullness. And the second half of the month, when the moon's light is shrinking, is because it's getting closer to the sun, and therefore its light is shrinking. And so what's happening? What does that mean? The fish and according to the relationship between the mashpia, the giver, which is the sun, and the receiver, and the makabel, which is the moon, who asher makabel, who b'karoiv al hamashpia, ech hamakabel yichol lahashpia v'heleir. 1 second, I lost my place. Is in a way that when the makabel, the receiver, is close to the mashpia, the giver, he's not makabeling, and he's not able to give over and shine. And when he is far away from the mishpia, this is the beginning of his influence and shining on him. In other words, it's the distance that causes the ability for the energy, I guess, to go over, if you will. So in other words, the closeness of the moon to the sun in the second half of the month is because it's closer to the essence, which is above from the light of the sun. In other words, for the crown to come on top of both of them, they have to be close together. If one is further away, in other words, when the light of the moon is shining the most on the 15th of the month, it's over here, right? Like here's the sun, like here's the beginning of the month. Obviously, this is accurate, but here's the sun and the moon together, right? The beginning of the month, you don't see the moon. It starts traveling away, you start seeing it. It's getting brighter and brighter and brighter and brighter. It's furthest away, you see it very bright. As it comes closer, it's shrinking and shrinking and shrinking until it comes next to the sun. You don't see it again. This cycle repeats. So what the Rebbe is saying now is the reason that you see the moon reflecting the sun at its fullest state is when it's further away. And you don't see it because it's closer together. And the crown, the keter, that needs to encompass both of them. In other words, for them both to be equal, that keter, that crown, has to encompass both of them together. So they have to be equal, so to speak, in size, and they have to be close together in distance, or the crown can't sit over both of them. Let's continue with that and discuss what that means. The dargazum is bata mot haor, and the closeness of this level is because the light is diminishing. Because when you have light, you don't have essence. And you have essence, you don't have the light. But the essence is above the light, right? When two people are embraced in a hug and they become one, it's the ultimate closeness, right? You want to get close to your wife or one of your children's or a good friend of yours, whatever. You give them a hug. You have two bodies that are totally together. They become one. They're hugging. They become one essence. As you separate further away, they become distant, right? So the further away they get, the more you can see them. But that doesn't mean they're closer to you. It means they're further away. Because that is the idea of what we say, Gilui and Etzem. It's a basic concept in Chassidus and Kabbalah that spoke about it like the Etzem, the essence of the sun, is the ball of the sun. The rays or the lights that emanate from the sun is what we call Gilui, the revelation of the sun. So what's more powerful? The sun, obviously, right? The further away from the sun, the more diminished the rays get, and the less powerful they are, right? If someone was able to go through the ozone and get close to the sun, they would just melt. You wouldn't be able to handle the intensity. It's only because we're so far away and there's an ozone layer and protective that we can enjoy the light of the sun, but we're getting a lower aspect of it, right? This is called Etzem and Gilui. So Etzem is above revealing, right? The essence of a person, someone's name or how you explain them, right? Like how do you explain God? You can't explain God. The second you name God, Hashem, Elohim, El Shaddai, Hashem, once you give a name to God, you're describing him. You're describing how he relates his energy to the world. That's not him. You can't describe God. You can't explain God. You can't name God. The second you name him, you're naming an aspect of how he relates to the world. So what's a higher energy? His essence and being, or his revelation in different names? Obviously his essence and being. And that's the point that Rebbe is trying to get across. Now, that the essence is above the revealing. Rak ha'ara ma'ha'etzem is gala ha'or. It's only a ha'ara, a radiation, a light, if you will, that is revealed from the essence that causes light. And therefore, and the reason the moon from the second half of the month to the beginning of the month is shrinking every single day is because the light is getting less, because you're getting closer to the essence. The moon is getting closer to the sun. And so what happens? The gilui, or the revelation, or the light is diminishing, but the connection to the essence is getting closer, right? And the essence is above the light. And this is how the moon will become like the sun, because their essences will be so connected and united that a crown will be able to go above both of them. Because one will no longer be bigger than the other. You won't have an essence and a revealing. You'll have two essences with the moon, the Keter, the crown, above both of them. But Oyemek Yoiser. Now we're going to go a little deeper in this concept. In general, the essence of something is concealed and the light is revealed. And this is how it's related to another. Since we're not able to receive the true essence of something, only its light, right? You can't receive God's true essence. We wouldn't exist. The whole concept of the tzimtzum, of when God concealed and hid his energy and brought through what we call as a makam panoi, an empty place. And he shot up what we call as a kav, a light of energy through there. God went through many stages of concealing, contracting, concealing, contracting. The energy that we get in this world that runs all the world is like a drop of a water in the ocean compared to the essence of God. The sun is the closest example we could think of. If you got near the sun, as we just said, you would just melt. You couldn't exist. You would totally fail to cease to exist. Too much. So we're getting just a little bit. It's called a ha'ara, a light. And the light is revealed, and it's called daylight or light. And the essence is concealed, and it's called darkness. But the connection between the essence itself is the opposite. But regarding the essence of the thing itself, right? The darkness is, wait 1 second. The radiation is like dark, and the essence is like the light, because the radiation is a much lower level from the luminary itself, not from the revealing from our perspective. And from this, we can understand that it's necessary to diminish the light in order that it can get close to the essence. And it's not rather than the time and the boundaries of the mitzias in and of itself that won't be able to receive from the essence, right? That's why it has to be diminished. But when you have a unity with the mishpia in such a way that the makabel, the receiver, is becoming one, just like the mishpia, the giver, then there's no longer this relationship of giving and receiving. But they become equal. And the light of the moon will become the light of the sun. And then together, their oneness will reveal. So, this is a concept that's very tricky to wrap your head around, because the world we know it now, it's one or the other. It's essence, etzem, or gilui, revelation. Luminary and light, sun and its rays. And they're opposites. The essence can't be revealed, and the revelation is not the essence. What the Rebbe is saying now is that when Mashiach comes, and we're going to get into this because the underlying message is that the Jewish people and God are truly one, and that will be manifested when Mashiach comes. That's it's a hard concept to wrap your head around and to understand. And in fact, it's one of the most profound and challenging aspects of our journey as Jews, which is, where do I end and where does God begin? In other words, is how much is on me and how much is on God? How much do I have to do and how much do I have to let go? Right? All the time, it says netzach and hod. It's the vacillation. It's the energy of how much do you do and how much do you allow and move out of the way for God to work through you, for God to do, right? It's this constant push and pull. It's a dance. But the goal is that, like the forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, were chariots for God. In other words, their bodies, Moshe Rabbeinu, all our Rebbes, were so totally transformed that the light of God was no longer hidden within them, and they reached a state of sorry, 1 second, I got it. Hang down here, that's bothering. Of equilibrium, if you will, with God, where there was no separation, where they were totally in a state of oneness with God in a calm, peaceful way. And that's the idea. And then the godly energy will reveal out, because the essence of the light and the moon will be one. The soul and the body will become one. God and the Jew will become one. Will reach a state of completion and oneness. This is what Mashiach is about. And then it won't be this war to search for identity, for purpose, for why am I here? What am I supposed to be doing? It'll just be a natural flow. Everything will just flow. There'll be no more resistance. There'll be no more tug of war. Everything will manifest itself in a total state of oneness. And according to this, we can understand the diminishing of the light of the moon in the second half of the month. The only thing that is diminishing is the level of the light, ha'ara, the radiation, the revelation. Because you're getting closer to the essence, which is above the revealing, above the light. But it's not diminishing in a revealed way. In the days of the month, as the days are going higher. But through the Yidden, we're going and adding on and revealing the essence, which is above from the revelation of the light. That's our job. That is our job, is to reveal light in darkness, because the darkness is really where God is hidden. And by working Hashem, by avodas Hashem, by Torah, by mitzvot, by all the things we do, we're digging deep into this darkness and pulling out the light. Right? So it's happening right now, by the way, in Israel. The Frierdiker Rebbe, the sixth Rebbe of Chabad, the Rebbe's father-in-law, said that before Mashiach comes, that the klipa, the forces of evil in Israel, will be so deep and dense, and God's going to have to pull that blackness, that dark negative energy out, and it will be a very painful process. And that's what we're experiencing right now. I don't want to get too political, but there's a lot of garbage, a deep state of a lot of self-destructive, self-hating Jews, Erev Rav, a lot of very evil people intertwined in the government of Israel who are trying to destroy from within the Jewish people. And this is this negative energy that's enmeshed with the light. And the goal is to remove the light from the darkness and to pull out the good and separate the good from the bad. And that's what's happening in the world by that. I don't want to get too deep into it, because these are all deep concepts that could be forbragging about for quite some time. But before the sin of the Eitz Chadas, evil and good were separated. God said, don't eat from that tree. And of course, they didn't listen. They ate from the tree. And what happened is the good and evil became intertwined. It's called the tree of knowledge. The tree of life is when good and evil is tucked away. Tree of knowledge is, what is it? Knowledge of good and evil. Everything got enmeshed. Everything got mixed together. And the darkness and the light got so mixed together that it happens all the time. People get into business relationships. You know how many times I have people contacting me of good friends, of people who knew each other very well, and they went into business together, and things went sideways really quick. One person ripped another person off. People who were supposedly friends, you meet someone, they seem like a nice person, they stab you in the back. Someone may look bad, they turn out to be good. It's very hard to discern good and evil. And that's how it's been for a long period of time. But it's getting to the point where God is re-separating it right now. And what's sick is how many so-called normal people are siding with evil. If you're siding with Hamas and Palestine against Israel, people who literally came into Israel and raped, murdered, dismembered children in front of their parents, parents in front of their children, the worst atrocities that mankind could do. And when Israel went to retaliate, to try to fight back, Hamas took their own children as human shields. And Israel is the most precise army. It's the highest. There's something called a civilian to enemy to soldier casualty rate, where every innocent civilian that is killed in war because of trying to kill a soldier, there's a rate. America has the worst civilian to soldier killing rate in the history of any other country, hands down. America, when they go to war, they could care less. They drop bombs on villages. They wipe out women, kids without a blink of an eye. They carpet bomb huge amounts of places. No problem. It's war. Israel goes through such great lengths to precision and try to get one person because they're so afraid of harming a so-called innocent person. They're not innocent anyways because they voted Hamas into power. They're all supporting them. They had elections that they're celebrating. The whole Gaza celebrates when they take a hostage. So they're not even innocent. But let's say they are for a second. The level of precision they go through to try to avoid harming these citizens is unheard of in any army in the world. And yet people are attacking Israel and condemning Israel, and no one says peep about Hamas. That's evil. That's pure evil. Not only the people who are committing the atrocities, those that are supporting them, those who are backing them on social media, those who are putting money into their pockets, they're all going to be gone. Gone. You know how many stories are in their prophets of how many hundreds of millions of billions of people are going to be wiped off the face of the earth from plagues, from warfare? There's countless stories in the prophets. All our enemies will be gone. The only thing that will be left in this world are the Jewish people and those righteous Gentiles who keep the 7 laws of Noah and support them, our friends. And right now, God is doing a weeding out process. And people real soon are going to come to the conclusion of what is good and what is evil, or God's going to show them very quickly. So he is now once again separating the darkness and light, the good and evil, extracting the negative energy, and it's going to be really clear. There'll be no more fence people. You won't be able to say, well, I'm not really sure. You're with God and the Jewish people and light and good, or you're against and evil. That's it. And it's getting to that point right now. So the point I'm trying to bring out from this is that this concept of separating darkness and light is happening, and it's happening really quickly right now. And God is doing a lot of sifting, and a lot of people don't realize what's happening, but that's exactly what's happening. So the idea is once all that negative energy is pulled out, all that will be left is good. And the good will become revealed in the essence of everything. And that's when we will reach our state of completion, if you will. Okay, Vav, let's hop back in. V'yesh l'mar is to say, she'inin zeh mudgash b'yoser b'kiyam esarach shleimot chodesh Kislev. And this whole concept of the disk of the moon being complete on the 15th of the month is emphasized even more in the month of Kislev. Chodesh Kislev hu chodesh hashlishi b'chodesh b'chorif. It's the third winter month. The Kivan, the chodesh hashlishi b'chodesh kites, and the third summer month is the giving of the Torah, which is the month of Sivan. Racha tilase v'dugmasa b'chodesh Kislev. In the month of Kislev is similar, because in the month of Kislev we're given the Torah of Chassidus. It's the third winter month. Yutes Kislev on the 19th of Kislev, Shuhu Rosh Hashanah Uman Torah, the Torah of Chassidus, the Torah of Chassidut. The Inim Zek Yedua Sheman Torah Hu Yom HaChasuna the Hasuna the Kodesh Baruch Hu Im Knesset Yisrael. And we know that at the time of the giving the Torah, that was like the wedding, so to speak, between God and the Jewish people. And then we had a clear delineation and roles. God was the giver, the mashpia, or the light, or the sun, if you will, and the Jewish people were the reflector, or the wife, or the moon, if you will. But the ultimate completion will be when God and the Jewish people are totally one. The Rebbe adds mamash kaviyocho, meaning like really, but so to speak. In other words, there's no equal to God. No one could be. God is God. God's totally removed from everything. But it means that we will fulfill our true divine purpose and reach that level of where we're supposed to be in the ultimate completion, where we will have that simple oneness together with God. That the Jewish people are not necessary, so to speak, to receive any more from God, because it will then be revealed that God and the Jewish people will be one. That are, as we pointed out earlier, what does that mean? It means that the godly soul within you the animal soul and the godly soul will both serve the physical body. There will be no more, should I do this? Should I not do this? This is what God wants, but I don't feel like it. This is what I want. All the time in these grinding of trying to figure things out, everything will be in a state of flow. And our bodies and our souls will be totally in alignment with God. And there will be no more getting the light and receiving light and giving light. It'll just be, like we said, a total state of energy flow, where they will both be equal. And this is hinted in the third month, and we see this also, the fact that the Torah was given in the third month of Sivan, and the Torah of Chassidus was given in the third month also in the winter of Kislev. And the number 3 represents a completion, because we have what we could say like thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. The first is like thesis, it's the energy from above. Second antithesis is the energy from below. And the synthesis is the combination of both of them. 1, 2 combined into 3. And according to this, we can fulfill the completion of the month when it reaches the 15th of the month in the third month, which is coming up. The Chodesh Matan Torah Yom HaChanukah, and this is the third month where we have our wedding, and the ultimate completion of the marriage between God and the Jewish people, when the light of the moon will be like the light of the sun, and that the moon will no longer have to receive from the sun, because then it will become one like the sun. And then the Jewish people, the moon, and God, the sun, will truly be one once again, like it was when our souls were up above before we came down into the physical world. Let me see where we're at. Okay. Zion. Make Yoiser in a deeper way, Mudgash Enyin Bikiyamas Rabbi Shlomo said the Chodesh Kislev. Yoiser that the completion of the moon on the 15th of Kislev is even higher than the completion of the moon on the 15th of Sivan, when the original Torah was given. And the difference between the summer months and the winter months, basically in the Jewish calendar, we don't separate. We do, but in our discussions and the way we measure things, so to speak, we don't have 4 seasons. It's the summer months and the winter months. The year is split kind of in the middle, right? And the winter months start in the Hebrew month of one second, I confused myself. The winter months begin in the Hebrew months of Tishrei. You have Tishrei, you have Cheshvan, and you have Kislev. And that starts the winter calendar. And the summer calendar starts in Nisan, with Pesach. So when we say winter and summer, we're talking about splitting in half. So the difference is basically in the summer months, the sun is shining more and it's hot. And it's much more powerful than in the winter months. Because the summer, the days are hot, and the days are long. And in the winter, the days are short. And the lights are longer. Eretz HaKodesh. And we see this especially in the land of Israel, where the service in Israel, the summer months are considered when the name Havaya is revealed, from an energy from above to below, right? And the energy of the winter months is when it's basically our service, when we have to work harder to reveal the light from above of God. And therefore, the completion of the moon on the 15th of the month in the summer months. Then we have the main revealing of the sun, which is the name of God, so to speak, on the 15th of the month. And the service of the Jewish people, the moon is lessened. It's more God's energy of the giver. And you could see the difference, the separation between the giver and the receiver, the sun and the moon. And therefore, we still see that the completion of the moon is when it's receiving at the highest level from the sun. But on the 15th of the month of the winter months, then the main service of the Jewish people is what's the Ikar, Levana, the moon. But and this emphasizes the ultimate completion of the marriage, because then we're the ones who are doing the heavy lifting, if you will. And then it's not so clear anymore the difference between the giver and the receiver. Rather, the receiver becomes like the giver. In addition to this, Hashem Kislev Shemom Yeched Shel Chodesh Hashli the Chodesh HaKarev. We know, already said this in Parshas Toldos, that Kislev is two letters, two words. Kis Velev. Kis is from the Russian Kisui, which means to conceal or hide. Lev is Lamed Vav, which is 36, which is the Gematria Ela, which is going on revealing. Hashem Pa'amim Shisha. Shisha Pa'amim Shisha. 6 times 6 is a revealing of the emotional attributes. And you combine these together and you have Kislev. So the very name Kislev is concealed, revealed together. It's concealing and revealing, light, darkness, light, darkness. An indication of the unification of concealment and revealing. When the very essence becomes revealed, again, that's a concept that's beyond what is we're in existence right now. And then there will no longer be a giver and a receiver. But rather they will literally become one. And we see this emphasized especially in the festivals that take place in the latter days of the month of Kislev, which I believe is the only month this takes place. As we said, first of all, we have Yom Tov of Hanukkah, the festival of Hanukkah, that takes place in the very end of the month. The moon is diminishing more and more and more. With Gashkam before we grew the and we said Yom Rishon had leak where the moon is traveling further, goes away. Now it's already coming back, if you will, and it's shrinking. Yom Rishon all the way in the first month of the month, when again it goes to its rebirth cycle. And as we already previously said, the fact that the moon is shrinking and it's getting smaller for the festivals of Hanukkah and Yud Tes Kislev is not that it's getting lessened, it's that its light is getting lessened. And what's happening is we're getting closer to the essence, which is already above the light. Every light that we're lighting up in Hanukkah, we're lighting up more lights. And what's happening? The moon's getting closer to the sun. So we're having light and essence combined. So a festival of Hanukkah, more so than pretty much any other festival, personifies this concept. Tes. Al bize yesh bar hatam hakrivois v'hakviois the Rosh Hashanah the Torah Chassidus Hagim he the Achri Milei Shlemas Levanam. And according to this, now we can start to make sense of the fact that the festival of all festivals, Yud Tes Kislev, takes place in the latter half of the month. How did we only get through such a small amount of pages? Maybe because I'm talking a lot. Wow. Okay, let me speed it up a little bit. The Rosh Hashanah, Matan Torah, the Torah Chassidus, and the unique advantage of the Rosh Hashanah and Matan Torah of Torah Chassidus, Hagim, Yutes Kislev, Shubo Metchila, his Galus, the Torah Say Shal Mashiach. This comes in the beginning of the revelation of the Torah of Mashiach. Chassidus is the beginning of the revelation of Torah of Chassidus. Of Mashiach, excuse me. Torah Chadash Mitzitesi, the new Torah that will come out from me. From God. I don't mean me personally. It's not compared at all to the Torah we have now. Torah Our sages teach us that the Torah we learn now is considered like hot air compared to the Torah that we're going to learn when Mashiach comes. What does that mean? It's kind of hard to comprehend, but that's what's going to happen. And the unique thing that will take place in the days of Mashiach regarding the Torah when we got married to God in the first place. Kedisa ben Midrash, Mashro, the Melech, Shekadesh Isha, V'kasev, Lo Metanois Miot. Second. כיוון שבו האחז כסב לא מתנות רבות So it says, for example, a mashal is given, like if a king is engaged to a woman, and it's not given like many presents, since that is coming to and we continue. So it says this world is like considered like the engagement. In other words, it's not like the full-blown wedding. It says on Matan Torah we got married to Hashem, but it's like an engagement. A king gets engaged to his wife, and it's not all the presents and the big festivals and it's something, but it's the marriage. That's when the whole thing takes place. So this world is considered like the engagement stage. And this is like the moon when it is still not in its complete way, where it's not able to give light, but is only a receiver. But in the days of Mashiach, we'll have the full-blown wedding with all the abundance. And then we'll have our true marriage. Excuse me. It says you have like you'll be like the stars in abundance, my righteous people. And then in the days of Mashiach, the Jewish people and God will really, literally be like one mamish. And then the light of the sun and the moon literally will become one. And the Jewish people will no longer only be receiving the light of the moon, of the sun, we will be like the sun, literally. And then it will be revealed that the Jewish people and God are truly one. This is say that this matter is emphasized and hinted also in the way that the Rosh Hashanah and Matan Torah Chassidus is the Achri Moevis Shleimot Levana after the fulfillment of the moon. Because this is hinted on what will be the ultimate completion of the moon. Because then, as we said earlier, the light is diminishing, but the essence is getting closer. And that's when we will reveal our true state of oneness. Prati Shaisar, more specifically, Kavios Hayi, Beyom Hashlishi, Mudisbarech, Yom Shabbat Shahabed Zayin. We see special about how the third day is blessed from Shabbat, which was on the 17th. As we said earlier, it blesses out 3 days. Kislev Shomet Chila Hakari, Voice Lebanon, Hamani, Yos Kamoisoi, the Achriyade Hakana, the Demilo Hashlemat Lebanaba, Erev Shabbos. And this is beginning the preparation for the completion of the moon, which was on Erev Shabbos. Maham Shachai, Vayom Harivi'i, Ki Vayom Hashlishi, Kufal Bo, Ki Toiv, Toiv, the Shamayim, Toiv, the Brios. Good in the heavens and good on the earth. The third day represents double goodness. And then, as we said earlier, and this will bring about the manifestation of the ultimate completion, which there will be one above and below together. And literally become one Metzias, one entity. And on the fourth day is when God created the two great luminaries. And then the moon was not receding from the sun. They were both the same size, as we said. But it needs the crown above both of them. And on the fifth day, Yom HaBaracha L'chai, Yom HaShishi, Kitay Ma'od. Yud. V'yesh l'kasher im ze'im parshas Shavua, but parshas Erev Shabbos, the Yom HaShabbos, parshas V'yishlach. Now we're going to connect it to this week's parsha V'yishlach, but parsha the Yom HaShlishi, the Yom HaRevi'i, parshas V'yeshev. And after this, we know we have parshas V'yeshev, Hachidush, Avodas Yaakov, parshas V'yishlach, V'yeshev the Gabi, Avodas as Parshas V'yetze, and the difference or the unique thing in the service of Yaakov and Parshas V'yishlach. Yaakov sent off the angels. V'yeshev and Yaakov dwelt. Regarding the service in Parshas V'yetze, and Yaakov went out. V'toilos and the offspring of Yitzchak. Parshas V'yishlach V'yeshev heim b'gamar ba'avodas abirurim. That the Parshas of V'yishlach V'yeshev, that this week's parsha and next week's parsha, are indicative of the completion of the service of birurim, of refining, of rectifying Esav in the world. Hein birurim Lavan, hein birurim Esav, the purification of Lavan and of Esav. Ad kirikach sheYaakov mukan kavar lahamamor matzav diyimot haMashiach. And such, when we see that Yaakov already is holding in the situation of Yomot HaMashiach, ready for Gula. Shalochin, therefore, Aleph, Yishlach Yaakov Malachim, the fun of Al Esav, Achav, V'Ratzah, Seir. And the fact that Yaakov sent off the angels before him to his brother in the land of Seir, Shlach Yodi'ah, Negamar V'Shlem, B'Tak the Shlemas, B'Chidz HaMerdregas, Kudam Yizbaram B'Nizkam. It showed that he was already in a state of refining, of being complete, of his rectification. And to reach the place and the time that they will go together to the redemption. Adonai Shira, Kamo Yemei HaMashiach. As it says, and that God will judge, Yaakov will reach the state of redemption, and God will judge Esau on the Mount of Seir. Base V'yeshev Yaakov, and Yaakov dwelt. V'yakash Yaakov Yishlav V'yishlaveh, V'yeshev V'yishlaveh before Shekafutz Alav Regazin Shal Yosef, and he dwelt, showing that he was dwelling in a good way. V'al hapasik V'yishlaveh ba'aretz Mitzrayim v'al Lizman Kiyoyim V'yod Shlaveh Amiti Shebiyamim HaMashiach, and this state of dwelling, of reaching a state of equanimity, of calmness, will of course reach its ultimate completion in the days of Mashiach. And that's the hints. Correct. A second. Gotta stretch a little bit there. Pada b'shalom, and I was redeemed in peace. My soul, which is connected, of course, to Yutes Kislev, Kimfi Shavavor Admor Haemstui Shamitis the Shlemus, and in Pada b'shalom Yehi B'Yamim HaMashiach. And the fact that we're being redeemed in peace, all these levels will reach its completion in the days of Mashiach, because that's when the redemption and the peace will be complete. And the difference between the situation of Yaakov, when his main work and service was to refine the work, and the situation we're in now, when the work is done and everything's been refined, and we're ready for Mashiach. He alderek bedugmas hachayiluk ben umor hamatzav shalavana kafi shemakabelas hachamal lamda mitzvah kishnev yishavim, and then we have an example of what will be. And the difference between these two situations is, as we said earlier, that the receiver and the giver will reach a state of oneness. Yaakov Nimr Shalavana Mo'ar Katan. The Yaakov is like a mushal, an example of the small lights. Yaakov Nikru Katan. Miyakam Yaakov Ki Katan Hu. L'chein Katan Mino Katan. Fa'alpi Hayadua Shemiot Levana. And according to the diminishing of the moon, whom Yipnei should be Bias Kalim, the Tohu. This is like an example of the breaking of the vessels, the shrinking of the moon, where in the world of Tohu, the vessel shattered and the sparks of holiness fell down below. And then there was a great descent in the sphere of Malchus, the moon. And it became a makabel, a receiver. The Bia, and it descended to the lower worlds of Bria, Yetzir, and Asiya, the lower three of the four worlds, in order to refine the sparks of Tohu. That's what we've been doing as a nation of Israel all these years. Nimsa, and it comes out from there, Shamamdo, Metzavo, Shalavanat, Tzricha, the Kabo Hama, Hu Tzricha, Vodas Habiror. And the situation of the moon was necessary to receive from the sun in order to do the service of refining or rectification. That was what Yaakov's main work was. But since we've completed the service of rectification and refinement, the sun is the moon is, no longer like the vessel of the level of a makabel, of a receiver. Rather, now the moon is ready to be a light, just like the sun. Two great lights, which means in an inner dimension that God has put a tremendous amount of trust and belief in every Jew, that we have the power to no longer sit around and wait for God to tell us what to do or show us what to do or be the light, so to speak, or the leader and we the follower, but that we need to take the initiative and step up and use that divine power to reach our state of completion or one with Hashem himself. V'yesh lamor is the seisha inin zemuru mazgam b'toichen aparshas v'yishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav al Esav echav she'akoyv she'rshor me'olam hatikun. And this is the idea that Yaakov sent out angels to his brother Esav. Yaakov represents the world of tikkun, shlach malachim lefanav mamash, that he literally sent out the angels. And this is to above and a higher level of Esav, his brother, which is from the source of the world of Tohu, which is a higher place. In order to draw down these high levels, are called maki for surrounding lights or energies of Tohu, below into Tikkun, Bechinas or penimi, into an inner light. Ve'ir hamakif b'penimi yechidav chad yichad. That these very big lights should be internalized in a very deep way to reach a state of oneness, what we say of tohu and tikkun, or makif and or panini, the surrounding or general light of God in the world and the inner light of God inside of you should be unified as one. וזהו גם תוכן העניין לחיבור וייחוד הבנה החמה. And this is what we say the unification of the moon and the sun, Yaakov and Esav, or Pinimi, or Makif, Mamadi Kolabim, Besoviv Kolamim. So the moon is no longer a receiver of the sun. The Rebbe said this like 7 or 8 times. I'm not laughing up at the Rebbe. I'm showing how much he's emphasizing this point of the sun and the moon will become equal, one existence. Yes, Lamor is to say, this applies even more so in our generation. Bagdama sha'af shemetzad Yaakov nikmaroi nishlamoi kol inini habirori ukavar az. In a preface of this, that even in the situation of Yaakov is complete in his work of refining the world, and that's all that is ready and necessary for the redemption already. Nevertheless, this has not manifested itself in the world, because we still look in the world and we don't see redemption, right? It still seems pretty dark. If you look at the news, not that the news means anything, it's all garbage, but it doesn't really seem like things are in a redemptive state of reality. It seems the opposite. After all the deeds in the service of the generations of the Jewish people since the start of the nation of Israel, especially after the revelation of the Torah of Chassidut and Yud Tes Kislev, and the well springs have already been spread out. Especially after the work of all our Rebbes in every generation. Or the well springs of Chassidus have been spread out to the furthest corners of the world. All the work is complete. And the buttons have been polished. And all is prepared for the coming of Mashiach. From this we can understand that our work now, after all of these things, is not the work of birurim, of refining. But the work right now is only to bring the redemption in actuality. Yud Beis. Yes, there is to say, he beit Yaakov ish, ubeit Yosef lahavi, ubeit Esav the kash. Says that the house of Yaakov will be like a fire, and the house of Yosef will be like igniting the fire, and the house of Esav will be like straw, lighted up. Yeshu Anegev Ad Har Esav Yigalois Ad Sarfat Yusha Es Ari Hanegev Adam Yisha Bahar Tzioy Nishpat Esav will judge Esav. We already said it. Okay. Michedush Shel Beit Yosef Shubidreinu, and we see the unique thing of the house of Yosef Yitzchak, the leader of our generation, regarding previous generations, like in the times of the Alter Rebbe, which is likened to the house of Yaakov. Interesting. So he's saying that Yaakov was like the Alter Rebbe, and Yosef is like the Frierdiker Rebbe. And since the wellsprings of Chassidut have already been spread out to the furthest corners of the world, there's no further to go. Sarfat, and including the country of Sfat of France, which was a very low place, and Chassidus has been spread there. There's Manosh of Rabbeinu Hazakin, like in the times of the Alter Rebbe, when he had to go to battle against Napoleon. Napoleon to the Alter Rebbe was like Bilam to Moshe. It was the leader for Klippa, of impurity. The wellsprings of Chassidus never used to be spread out to a place like France. Because it's such a lowly grub place. But Dafkas, the reign was specifically in our generation through the house of Yosef. Now we see that the wellsprings of Chassidut have been spread out even to a lowly place like France. I say lowly, I mean like grub, like very coarse, unholy, if you will. Through Beit Yosef, the Frierdiker Rebbe, who established Tamke Tamimim Lubavitch inside France. In addition to this, we see that Sarfat is Gematria Sheva Mo'is V'Shivi'im 770. V'Shleimus the Mispar Sheva, which is the completion of the number 7. Kafi Shekal Echad Kolom Esther. Ukafi Shekal Echad Kolom Mimea. Right, the completion of 7 in times tens and 100. 7 hundreds and 7 tens, 770. I already said that. You combine them together, 7 and 70. This is hinting on the fact that France has already been rectified and purified. Some people say that's why there's so much anti-Semitism in France, because there's nothing left for the Jews to do there, because all the work has been done. Yesh learns to say, already said that Nigamar Vinishlam Bira Hedam Shiniva Bishvia. You may have been yan because of practice. Yeah, Biro at Safacha Misparo 770. After Beit Yosef Pshuto had by chain Bahara Ba'ar Vikamarabo and commercial 770. Okay, I'm just talking about how again the wellsprings of Hasidus have spread out even to a lowly place like France, and we see that France is the same gematria of 770. Yud Gimel. The Doreno Gufa, New Taisef, Oid Yosef, Kahanak, Shkama Sarah, Vishlemas, and Chodesh Kislev Bashana Zuk. And all these matters are even more applicable now in our days and our times. Yudom Mufarsim, Rosh Chodesh, Russia Tavis, the Shana Zuk. Shanani Floats. Bo, I will show you wonders in everything, but call in all the matters. Hashana Atzmo Bachal Bohem. I will show you wonders which are above miracles. Palais, Lashon Rabim, in the multitude. Literally. Just like it says, I will take you out of Egypt, I will show you wonders. Talking about the wonders that God is going to show the Jewish people right before Mashiach comes. We're waiting for those. And in this year, we see that the moon is already at its state of completion. And like in the 3rd month, and we're standing very close to that point. The mountain Torah of Chassidus, Yutes Kislev. And this is the beginning of the revealing of the Torah of Mashiach. Then we'll have the ultimate wedding between God and the Jewish people, where the light of the sun and the moon will be one. Just to think about this concept for a second. The codification of Chassidus into a system of learning started with the Alter Rebbe. And the first real book of Chassidut was the Tanya of the Alter Rebbe. And that's what we celebrate on Yud Tes Kislev. The Tanya is 54 chapters, just like the Alter Rebbe spent 54 days in jail. There's certainly 54 parshas in the regular Torah to show the connection. And the Rebbe said the Torah of the Alter Rebbe that started in Yud Tes Kislev is the beginning of the Torah of Mashiach. The most recent Chassidus that we have is what we're learning here. Nun Aleph Nun Beis. So if the Torah of the Alter Rebbe, the beginning of Chassidus from the Alter Rebbe, and we went through all the Alter Rebbe's Chassidut, the Mittler Rebbe, the Rebbe Tzamek Tzedek, the Rebbe Marash, the Rebbe Rashab, the Frierdiker Rebbe, and all our Rebbe's Chassidus to get to what we're learning every Monday night. We are learning the closest Torah that there is to the Torah of Mashiach in existence in the world. And that's why so many of these concepts, and I salute anyone who watches and follows, it's not easy. These are very deep concepts. I do my best to try to explain without taking too much time. But whether everything goes through or it doesn't, the fact that you're sitting and listening and absorbing it, nothing to do with me. It's the fact that the Rebbe said this is the direct path to bring Mashiach. So we are learning the most recent Chassidus, the closest Chassidus that there is to Mashiach, Torah. There's also a connection we see to the wedding of the Frierdiker Rebbe, Rushim, B'Torah Chassidus, B'Shaychim, Chatuna, and there's a connection between the spreading out of Chassidut and the wedding. Shebazeh Murgeshes, B'Yoyser Hashaychis, Chatuna, the Knesset Yisrael Ima Kodesh Baruch Hu, the Mos HaMashiach, and this is a foretaste of how it will be of the wedding between God and the Jewish people in the days of Mashiach. And then we will have the full revelation of the new Torah that will come out from God, Torah Mashiach. He writes as a mitzvos before mamish. The Rebbe said we can understand from all of this, and in our days, mamish, it's necessary only to open up our eyes and see this existence in actuality. That we are literally sitting together with God, and the Jewish people are literally one with God in the Shulchan Aruch, in the big festival of Mashiach, the Sudas and Nisuyim, the festival of our wedding, the Sudas Leviathan v'Shor Bar v'Yana Hameshamor, the festival of the Leviathan and the Shor Bar and the guarded wine. David Melch Mashiach. And the Hashem will turn to David Melech and say, Ben Shana Kos. It's like, it's wild what the Rebbe is telling us. And the main thing is the action. As we're standing here in Erev Shabbos, in the fulfillment of the fullness of the moon for Chodesh Kislev, and will be drawn down into Shabbos Kodesh and Motzi Shabbos Kodesh. And the 3 days that unique days that will bless us up to Yud Tes Kislev. Yud Tes Kislev, V'chav Kislev. And after that, we continue on to Hanukkah. And that we should increase in our Hasidic Farabengans for Hanukkah and Yud Tes Kislev. In all places, Medina, in all countries. In every city and every neighborhood. Excuse me. And not only big Farabengans. And in other words, not only just have big Farbrengens and everyone comes and big, the Rebbe says even it's simple Farbrengen, everyone should gather together. And especially also in your own home. This is the main thing. Bring with your own home and your family. We should purchase many holy books. Your home, the Rebbe says, should be like a miniature base of English filled with holy books and holy items. This should be the main thing, the ikar of the ikar. And it should not be necessary for the receiver and the mishpia to be in a separate thing. Just like the sun and the moon will become one. And it's necessary for every one of the Jewish people to increase on our forbringans, as we said. And the Rebbe says something very powerful now. It says it's necessary for every one of us to have 3 forbringans. Im atzmo, one with yourself. We'll call Esra koiches nefshay, with all 10 of your soul powers. Im b'nei beisoy, with the members of your household, number 2. Im chavera v'yirida ha'zeh ka hagish oid yoser. Should call echad nechad hu amashpia. And the 3rd one is with all your friends and whoever else you could reach out to. Shleimus levana shenasa kama hachama, until the sun is complete like the moon. And this is connection to the redemption of Hashiv lev avois ad banim, lev banim al avoisam. And that the heart of the fathers will reflect to the sons, and from the sons to their fathers. It's a very main point that we're going to finish up on. You have to forbring with yourself first, the Rebbe says. In other words, you got to be honest with yourself. We have to take time to sit down, ideally daily, at a minimum weekly, and just process what's working in your life, what's not working in your life, what do you need improvement on, how is your connection to God, how's your connection to the Rebbe, how's your connection to yourself, to your wife, to your kids, to your family, your community. You have to be honest with yourself. We're very good at deluding ourselves and saying, everything's fine, I'm fine, when there's a mess internally. So you have to forbring with yourself. You have to forbring with your family, and you have to forbring with the outside world. You need all 3 of them, because this is really what it's about. It's about, and this is the point that Rebbe is emphasizing, the giver and the receiver start to disappear. The most important thing is for your light to shine in yourself, to be comfortable in your own skin, they say, where you're good in your existence, you're working on yourself, and in your family and your surroundings, and all that energy starts becoming one. In these forbringings, we must arouse one another. To add on the 3 main columns that the world stands on: Torah, prayer, and good deeds. As it says in the pasuk, my soul was redeemed in peace. And God says, so to speak, that all those who dwell in the Torah and perform good deeds and pray together with the community, it is as if you redeemed my soul, God says. And mainly, literally, we're redeeming God and his children from captivity, meaning our godly souls that are stuck in our animal souls. But Pasha should take on the Admamish. The most important thing that should happen immediately is just like the request of Yaakov. It should be dwelling in a calm way. Before Gilui, it should come to actuality. And we should all travel to the base of Migdash Shlishi. Then we'll have the ultimate party and celebration and forbringing of the inauguration of the 3rd temple, or the Fnei Yemei Hanukkah. And this should take place even before we get to the month of the festival of Hanukkah. And we should increase in the Hanukkah lights and the Kedusha. And we'll reach the ultimate state of this and the redemption. We should go from strength to strength. And we will see God's return to Tzion. God bless you. Hashem should bless us to have eyes to see, ears to hear, and a heart to know. And we should reveal Moshiach in ourselves and the world around us. And God should fulfill his promise and redeem us now. God bless you. Moshiach now.